So for any folks we have on board who may be new, and we do have some new folks, which is awesome. The spring or the CISMA Workshop is an annual event that is typically hosted in partnership with the FLEPC, formerly FLEPC, the current Florida Invasive Species Council conference that they have each spring. As most of you know, last spring, we got hit with the pandemic, and so the conference was canceled, and FLEPC is not yet hosted a conference this year either. And so we wanted to go ahead and regroup with our CISMA folks and touch base and hold this virtual program. Dia mentioned, and I don't want to forget to throw this out there, Dia mentioned that the Florida Invasive Species Council, again, formerly FLEPC, is working towards hosting a full virtual conference in the fall. And so we're actually going to partner, FISP is going to partner with them. It will be a FISP event. And what I'm hoping to develop an agenda around engaging all of our FISP partners in some panels and presentations to essentially cover, you know, what everyone's doing on invasive species in the state. So a session dedicated to FISP partners presenting their work and really laying out agency roles, agency and organization roles. And then also dedicating some of the session to CISMA. As well. So look forward to hear it. We're, as Dia mentioned this morning, we're in the very early planning stages of that. So you may start hearing from me. I'll start kind of reaching out to folks to participate in that as details come along. So this afternoon, our agenda, I'm gonna jump in. I have some, I wanna update everybody on the CISMA leadership. There's been quite a few transitions over the past few years, really kind of since I came on board, which is fantastic. That's kind of what we want to happen. You know, we wanna see different people take leadership roles in the CISMAs. So I'm going to talk about that. And then because we are nothing if not flexible, because FISP and CISMA both thrive on flexibility, Dr. Stephen Enlow hopped on this afternoon, and he has some emerging issues that it sounds like we need to hear about. So I'm really glad that he's with us this afternoon, and he's going to share some recent stories about and some news about some stories related to glyphosate in manatees. And then a lot of you guys, I actually hadn't seen that one yet, so I'm looking forward to hearing that. And then there's been a story that kind of caught fire late last week about this toxin that was killing bald eagles. And there's been some issues with that in Florida as well. So you may have seen that story. So he's going to kind of hit on that too. After that, we'll go into some CISMA updates. We'll hear from the CISMA leads that are on the call. And then we will have a session on hosting virtual events. So I have some materials to share, and then I kind of want to have a discussion about, you know, looking at the material we put together, and you know what else is needed, so that we can then provide you with kind of a, you know, a guide that will be at your fingertips when you need to put together an event, virtual or otherwise, really. So with that, I think really briefly, since we still have Deb Stone on, Deb, I know you said you might have to hop off this afternoon. Can you just share again what you mentioned this morning about the pilot workshop for CISMAs, just so we can get all this group to hear that, and then we'll follow up with some more information, but I wanted to make sure we shared that again.
Yeah, thank you. So I help teach a class at UF called Restoration of Invaded Ecosystems, and it's kind of a general invasion ecology, but also really focused on treatment planning and having like something that incorporates adaptive management and gives you a really usable annual invasive treatment plan. And so we have taken about half of the class and are adapting it to like a workshop for professionals. And so what we've got right now is it's kind of similar to the NADA workshops as the amount of work that would be involved for participants. So you're looking at maybe 10 to 15 hours. The setup that we're doing initially is going to be all virtual. So you're going to be, there's going to be a kickoff meeting and then an ending meeting that are synchronous where everyone meets together. And the material in the middle of the workshop would be asynchronous, people do on their own, but interact some through discussion boards and such. And so people walk away with a concrete treatment plan that will hopefully feed up into any other management plans that they have and help improve the work that gets done out there. Our general philosophy is that to get a good treatment plan, you really need to just answer 3 simple questions. What do you have? What do you want? And how do you get there? And so that's the framework that we use in this workshop. So we're looking for one CISMA to be our guinea pig. So this is all, we're just finishing up the first offering through UF. We've done one offering with the Park Service. I have another offering for the Park Service planned in May. Rosalind, I know you are super excited about that one. But so long-term plans are to have something that might be in person, but obviously right now is still virtual. So I'll throw my school email address in the chat box. And if there are any takers, let me know.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know this morning Cheryl jumped on that and was really interested. So it sounds like something that would be great, a great fit for getting out amongst the different CISMAs regionally. So thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have had some transitions, and I'm really hoping that I have this covered as far as the folks who have cycled off, at least since I started in 2018. I know there were some previous CISMA leads as well, but we have had some changes. So like first and foremost, and like the biggest thing we want to do, and I wish there was something, this is where like the virtual meeting feels limited, because I wish in person we could give a big robust round of applause for these folks. But we really just want to thank anybody and everybody who's taken leadership roles in CISMAs. Again, it's totally voluntary. You know, it's a really good fit when you're in a professional role that the leadership or participating as in a CISMA fits really well in in the work you're doing already. And luckily that is the case in a lot of places and for a lot of people. But we also don't, intend for leads to be leads forever and ever. There are some cases where the position fits so well that it makes sense for the person in that position to lead a CISMA. And so that's kind of an exception where it's so well suited to the job duties. And so that's a good position to be in as well. It's got a little different. So we've early on, Andrea Chrisman helped. She really helped kind of when I first came on board. North Central Florida was really just kind of getting its bearings again. I think it had been reorganized a little bit, and Andrea was really critical to those early stages, getting that energy going again. Deb, who we just heard from, was down in the Big Scrub area, and she was helping with that CISMA. Before she went off to Tallahassee to pursue other things with the Department of Environmental Protection. We had Michael Sawinski in Suncoast, and he has transitioned off recently, as well as Chris Campbell over at East Central Florida CISMA. With Central Florida CISMA, Kelsey Johnson was kind of assisting in the leadership for a while. And as many of you know, Sherry Williams chaired that CISMA for quite a long time. When she took a different professional role in Seminole County, luckily she's still very much engaged in FISP, but was able to hand off the Central Florida CISMA role to some new folks, and they're just taking it and running. The Florida Keys Invasive Task Force, that's another one that's had some really long-term leads. And Janice Duquesnel rotated off this past year. And then just most recently, some of our longest standing CISMA leads, Aaron Myers and Crystal Segura, rotated off of Southwest Florida CISMA and are, and I want to say, I think Crystal emailed me and said they were leads since 2012, so it'll be eight or 9 years. So a good run with the Southwest Florida CISMA, and really doing a lot of good stuff there. So again, really here, I just want to get across how grateful we are to everybody who puts time into any participation in CISMA, but especially our leads, because it is a volunteer, it's often an additional task, but I think that it also really benefits those folks who take that on. So from there, I wanted to share who our current CISMA leads are. And let me pop a link in the chat box. Oh, we saw my notes there. So this is on our website, and it's on each CISMA's website. There's a few updates. This screen here is the most updated. The website actually needs a few updates still. But as you heard from Sarah Jean this morning, we're kind of in a transition mode over to that WordPress. But I shot her some of these updates this week. So mostly correct on that website, but that's kind of how you get in touch. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this as well is because for the folks who do take leadership positions in CISMA, all of these other leads across the state are really a support system for each other. And so, never feel shy about reaching out to other CISMAs to partner on projects, or to, if you heard them mention something they're working on and you want to find out more. I can't say enough about how incredible this network is, and this group of people that we work with is. Always really especially interested in collaboration and working together, and being supportive of anybody else working on the issue. So, we really want to make sure you know who your fellow CISMA leads are. And on this website that I linked to, you can reach out to them via email. Dan said he has a quick announcement about the map. So I'm gonna, what's up, Dan?
Hey, Emily. Hey, all. So I just wanted to just a very brief announcement here. This is news to me just within the last hour, actually. My co-chair very recently announced to me that he was actually taking on a new position in Oklahoma, Wade Gurley. So I really appreciate his willingness to help. It was not something that he planned, but it was just right circumstances. So very happy for him. But we were just getting started, really. And so I wanted to actually announce, though, that our new co-chair will actually be Mitch Berezowski, who has joined us here, it looks like under my name. Just wanted to make sure he got involved. So I wanted to introduce him real fast, or allow him to introduce himself, if that would be all right.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will do that in the CISMA updates. We'll introduce our new CISMA lead. So thank you so much for making that note. And also just shoot me an email with his contact information, and we'll get that up to date. As well as on the website. So yeah, thank you, Wade, for stepping up, and congratulations in even your brief tenure as a CISMA lead. Congratulations on your next role, and we'll get that information updated. And then, so what we'll do after our presentation from Dr. Enlow is we will have an opportunity for each of our CISMA leads to share some updates. And I want to caveat here that most, if not all, of the CISMAs have been in somewhat of a holding pattern since the pandemic. There's still been a lot of great work getting done, a lot of great collaboration, but I don't want anyone to feel pressured about their update, like they don't have that much to share. We really just want to hear kind of how you've been navigating the pandemic and the slowdown, and kind of what you're looking forward to working on, or what some of your priorities are. So there's just never any pressure in this network either, and I want to make sure everybody understands that. And so what we'll also do is introduce some of these new folks to you at that time. So I thought this was cool too, and I wanted to share it because it really shows the diversity and the engagement and the buy-in that we have from all of these different agency partners. Is this little simple little pie chart showing the leadership of the CISMAs by agency. And so there's a lot of Nature Conservancy and county FWC, and then university folks kind of make up the bigger chunk, but it's still really kind of really spread out across all the different agencies we work with, as far as folks who are leading these efforts. And I just thought that was really neat, so I wanted to kind of share it in that visual way. So again, thank you to everybody who has served in the past and who's rotating off, and huge thank you to everybody who's stepping up in their role. Like I said, you couldn't have come into a better, more supportive, collaborative network of folks. So we really want to make sure you guys get to know each other, and hopefully next year we'll be back together in person and can actually meet each other. But for now, it's nice to also be able to talk to everybody across the state. Okay, so with that, I'm going to unshare my screen and kick it over to Stephen to share some just really wild stuff that's happening. Let's see. All right.
All right, thanks, Emily. Give me just a second here to get this
Absolutely
shared. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, let me get this off. Okay, here we go. Okay, hey everyone. It's good to be here with you this afternoon. This is kind of a impromptu rapid response to emerging issues update that I want to give you. And I'm excited to do it. And here we go. So let's talk about glyphosate first from a general perspective. I know that a lot of you have followed closely the glyphosate issues over the last few years now. And I want to give you a sort of quick update on that. I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail, but I am going to sort of review what's happened. So glyphosate's been around since the mid 1970s. It really hit the market as something that could kill perennial weeds well, very good on perennial grasses. And we quickly embraced that and moved it into natural areas and it's been one of our go-tos, especially for invasive grass control, among other things. But we use a lot of glyphosate, and we've touted this as an extremely safe and effective herbicide for many, many years. And the ecotoxicological data on that has lined up with that. In 2015, the World Health Organization's group, the IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, whose mission is to really conduct research into the causes of cancer and really look at potential substances and activities that may cause cancer worldwide. And so they reclassified glyphosate from a possible carcinogen to probably carcinogenic. So that was a shift in their categories from 2B to 2A. You know, that sounds kind of like ho-hum, but this turned out to be a really big deal. Now, the media ran with that and immediately said glyphosate's a carcinogen because the IARC says it is. I want you to understand the IARC never classified glyphosate as a carcinogen. That would have been a category 1. They only moved it to probable carcinogen based upon their hazard assessments. Okay, so this moved it into a category of probable. So some of the known carcinogens in category 1 that they list: alcoholic beverages, asbesto, tobacco, opium, plutonium, solar radiation, UV tanning beds, wood and leather dust, and ionizing radiation, as scientific evidence that clearly links all of these very strongly to being carcinogenic. Okay, so some 2As: glyphosate, creosote, malathion, hair products and salons, red meat, hot beverages, shift work, and frying oil emissions. So they moved glyphosate into this category of 2A with these other things and a whole bunch more. And this was the thing that sort of started a whole lot of stuff. Now, the EPA disagrees with IARC's classification. They have weighed in on this repeatedly. They have reviewed and re-reviewed glyphosate and have basically still come to the conclusions that glyphosate is not likely to be a carcinogen. They have also blocked California's attempts to list it, to force manufacturers to put a cancer warning on their labels as they require for Prop 65. But the bottom line is, so the EPA has come out very strongly saying our data suggests that it is not a carcinogen. That's not changed. Around the world, it's kind of the IARC, which does hazard assessments against everyone else, where everyone else basically has come to the conclusion glyphosate is not a carcinogen. So the IARC kind of stands alone in this. And even the World Health Organization, which the IARC is underneath, has published 3 separate reports saying we don't really agree with the IARC and their assessments here. So I say all this to say nothing's really changed on all of that. We've talked about this before, but at the end of the day, no new assessments of glyphosate have transpired, and everything's still kind of the same regarding the EPA's stance on it and sort of a worldwide stance independent of the IARC. That did not stop California from putting glyphosate under Prop 65 onto a list of chemicals known to cause cancer. So they've now listed as a carcinogen based upon the IARC's revisions from 2B to 2A. And so when something goes to Prop 65 list, it sort of triggers Lawyer Central and the lawsuits begin. This subsequently happened, and as this was happening, we started getting headlines like this in the newspapers. that glyphosate's killing Biscayne Bay. We've had several different cities and counties have banned the use of glyphosate on public lands and waters. You can see that list on the right of the slide there. And I know some of you are likely working in those affected areas. Overall, though, this is not a Florida-centric thing. Glyphosate has been banned in over 150 US cities, and several countries across the world even, have proposed or are attempting to move towards glyphosate phase outs over the next few years. It's fascinating to watch some of these as they make the headlines, and then typically they quickly rescind those proposed bans, and not a whole lot of folks have staunchly moved forward with it. So there's a lot of countries interested in doing it based upon IARC's data, but few have really successfully banned glyphosate at this point. So we've had 3 trials, the outcomes, they all ruled against Bayer Monsanto for upwards of $2.5 billion. And subsequently, Bayer has denied wrongdoing throughout this entire thing, but has officially begun settling cases. There were over 100,000 lawsuits lined up against them, and they decided it was going to be cheaper to just settle for about $10 billion than it would be to fight off 100,000 lawsuits on this. So basically, this is far from over. There's a good chance that Bayer will drag out a lot of these settlements a long, long time. I'm not here to criticize or throw them under the bus, but the lawyers are involved, and this is likely to drag out for a long time. Bayer has still denied any wrongdoing at all in this. Those 3 big appeal cases are actually not covered under that. So we're going to see what happens to those massive 3 cases that transpired.
Hey, Steve,
okay.
Can I throw a quick question that came up in the chat box at you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Curious about the focus on Monsanto's glyphosate in particular, and then applied to glyphosate in general. Has anyone done the same test for carcinogenicity? Is that a word? It's a good word, I think.
Yeah, carcinogenicity. Yeah, sure.
On the proprietary inert ingredient.
Okay, yeah, so the inert ingredient question continues to come up here regarding potential issues with those. The EPA has increased its testing of inert ingredients, but in terms of across all glyphosate formulations, no, I don't think there's been anything over everything, but the EPA is looking a lot more stringently at inerts as potential players in this whole situation. So I'll just leave that there for the moment. Okay, and we'll come back to that if you want to. So to date, there have been no label changes by the EPA to any glyphosate products. So all of this that has transpired has not forced, or the EPA has not changed any labels regarding use. It's not become a restricted use product. It's not been banned, in certain areas. They haven't taken sites off of the labels. But something interesting that's now transpiring is glyphosate is going through the EPA's biological evaluation process. And this is kind of a quote unquote hazard assessment that assesses potential risks that registered uses of glyphosate may pose to individuals of a listed species or designated critical habitat. So this is kind of going back and casting a wide net saying, is harm possible to any listed species via glyphosate? And so this federal action will then be taken and move forward in the form of developing the biological opinion on glyphosate, where they will assess very closely all the species that they present within the biological evaluation. So what's interesting about this is, though, when you see media reports on this, it'll come out kind of scary. Because in terms of a summary of species effects determinations for glyphosate from the draft biological evaluation, that yellow number right here, 93% of the total species, they say are likely to be adversely affected out of a total of 1,676 or 1,795 species. So out of all the listed species, and this is across all taxa, not just plants, they say, is harm possible? And they say, yeah, about 93% of them, harm could be possible. So that doesn't mean glyphosate's killing all 93% of these things, but they are suggesting that harm could be possible. Critical habitats, and this is a huge one, and this is where likely the biggest issue may come up. given that a lot of our T&E species are going to be in natural areas and certainly not in ag fields, 96% of the critical habitats, they estimated out of 792, they say are likely to be adversely affected by glyphosate. We know glyphosate's a non-selective herbicide. It kills plants in general for the most part. And so it makes sense that that number would be exceptionally high. But anybody misconstruing this biological evaluation could take and run with these numbers in a way that the EPA is not intending here. Now, based upon the quality of the data available to do the biological evaluation, they say there's moderate evidence for the likely to adversely affect for 97% of the critical habitats and 96% on the species range. So the EPA, I think, is working with good data here. This has been through a massive modeling exercise. It's way too complicated to get into, but the bottom line is this is open for public comment before they move into the developing the biological opinion, which honestly is going to take years for that many species that they will now have to go through. Okay.
Stephen, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yeah.
When they determine the potential negative effects, do you know if they take into account, like, let's say you spray a bunch of Kogan grass and you kill all the Kogan grass, and so for a time there's probably negative impacts, but then you're able to do restoration. Does this calculation take into account the potential for positive effects because of the removal of invasive species?
Okay. I would have to go back and look at all the model parameters, and I will provide a link for those after I wrap it up here. It's a very complicated process by which they arrive at this. Emily, and we'll have to check back in on that, because yes, I understand where you're coming from there. Okay, moving on. So the next brewing controversy. How many of you have heard about or seen the recent headlines that more than half of Florida manatees have herbicide glyphosate in their bodies? Can we raise hands? Can we actually get a yeah, okay, we got some that are coming in. So this is kind of a scary headline, and boy, I really hate to see this one. So where's this coming from with such an awful headline that half the manatees in Florida now have glyphosate in their bodies? Okay, so this is coming from a paper in Environment International, which is a very reputable journal published by Elsevier, from a paper entitled Chronic Exposure to Glyphosate in Florida Manatee. This work is coming out of the University of Florida from the Center for Human and Environmental Toxicology, from a research group there. Full disclosure, CAIP has not interacted extensively with that group in the past. We have reached out to folks within the center itself to establish a better connection there, because we're very interested in this work. But this has transpired sort of independently of anything going on here at CAIP. Okay, so what's the deal with this paper? Basically, what they found in a nutshell was that glyphosate was detected in manatee blood plasma. Over 105 manatees sampled over a decade from 2009 to 2019, I think. So they actually detected glyphosate in the plasma of these manatees sampled. And they also detected glyphosate in 8 Florida water bodies over that same time period, at different sampling times throughout the year. Okay, so they are using extraordinarily impressive methodologies, analytical methodologies, to find and detect glyphosate. And they are finding glyphosate in the parts per trillion level, typically in like 20 parts per trillion up to about 220 parts per trillion. Okay, so they are finding it, and they are finding it. In the water bodies, again, exceedingly low concentrations, but they detected glyphosate in the Crystal River at multiple sampling times over that 10-year period. So much so, or so frequently within their sampling, that they declared glyphosate to be ubiquitous. That's sampling 3 times a year over about that 10-year period. Okay, so basically, it seems that their experimental methodologies for sampling, where they sampled, are robust. Their high-tech detection of glyphosate is exceedingly impressive. that they've been able to find it on the parts per trillion level. And that science seems very sound for those who have really looked into it. They then suggest that this results in chronic exposure of manatees, which means long-term continuous exposure or continuous re-exposure and potential adverse effects on manatees. So what they're saying here is we found it. And so we agree definitely, yeah, you found it there. So there is glyphosate present, and we think that's accurate. In terms of what the researchers are suggesting in terms of potential exposure to manatees, we've been looking at the EPA's numbers regarding EPA allowable levels of glyphosate. Now, they don't exactly list those numbers for manatees, but for other large herbivores such as cattle, they do provide numbers. And the concentration found in manatees is exceedingly low compared to the EPA allowable levels within cattle. Now, that's not exactly a perfect way to look at this. In terms of the water bodies they actually sampled, I just copied this straight from the paper, and you can see here some of the sites they're sampling from the Crystal River, and then down in South Florida, basically along the Caloosahatchee, and then on the East Coast, we've got STAs 1 and 2 down here, and then let's see the St. Lucie Canal, okay, up and down, so at different points along the canal there. So this is where they definitely were finding it. They found higher concentrations of glyphosate at the South Florida locations compared to Crystal River, but they still found it in Crystal River. Okay, so what is this? What do we take away from this right now? Well, first off, I'm exceedingly bothered by the fact that there's glyphosate detected in manatees at all. So I'm not happy about that, and that's troublesome. Is it at current? And I don't like it, and I think it's wrong. As is glyphosate at a concentration that is currently harming the manatees? This research paper did not actually do any research that demonstrated any link between glyphosate and manatee health. Okay, so the paper is a sampling paper. It is not a cause and effect where they're actually testing for glyphosate impacts on manatees. So they do suggest the chronic exposure could be causing problems. Now, some of the papers they cite come out of some sort of questionable labs. Seralini's lab in France that has generated some very unethical data on glyphosate, but not all of the work they cite is bad. And they are sort of building a case that this certainly needs to be studied. So we agree, yes, we need to study this, number one. Number two, we're bothered here at the CAIP that glyphosate is being detected in manatees. That's very, very troublesome to me, because it suggests that good stewardship is likely not occurring with glyphosate in a lot of places that we would be finding glyphosate present. Number three, it certainly indicates in general pretty large uses. We use a lot of glyphosate, there's no question. And should we question that? And I've argued before that yes, we should. I'm not throwing glyphosate under the bus. I'm not saying that suddenly there's a massive red flag saying to shut it down, but this certainly warrants our attention, and we need to be paying a whole lot more attention to this. So I think we're likely to see a lot more come out on this down the road very soon here. Within IFAS, having said all that, we published this one-page white page regarding saying, yeah, we still say glyphosate's okay to use if you follow the proper safety protocols. I think we're going to be updating this on stewardship because the concerns now are that a lot of folks may not be being good stewards when using glyphosate if we are finding this any levels of glyphosate in places like the Crystal River. Where is it coming from? The paper did not identify that. It's certainly something we need to be looking into. And one day we may look back on this and say it was a turning point for glyphosate. Or maybe not, depending upon if we can identify really what the source of glyphosate is here, and work with those to be better stewards of it, or to shift to non-glyphosate approaches. We have provided at UF at least 2 different documents regarding glyphosate alternatives. So both for landscaping, weed control, by my colleague, Dr. Chris Marble, and our integrated management of non-native plants in natural areas of Florida, where we have a lot of non-glyphosate recommendations for a lot of our invasive plants. So those are out there for you to take a look at and utilize. So again, I hate it. I hate the fact we're finding glyphosate in manatees. You may have specific questions on that. I want to cover one more thing and then we'll open it up for questions and go from there, okay? So the last thing I want to cover is something else, another study that's just come out. And many of you may be familiar with AVM, avian vacuolar myelinopathy, basically is what we'll say there. And this is basically something that has been documented to have be a killer of eagles. And in Arkansas many years ago, about 26 years ago, a number of bald eagles were found dead in a mass die-off. They ended up identifying it as the cyanobacterial neurotoxin causing vacuolar myelinopathy within those animals, those eagles. They've subsequently found that it is in waterfowl like coots, a number of other birds of prey, even in amphibians, reptiles, and fish. So they've changed the name to VM and kind of set the avian part aside. They've identified the cyanobacteria as Etochthanos hydrolicola, and this is a cyanobacteria that happens to grow very well on hydrilla of all things, okay? So this paper actually was published in Science, which is sort of the premier journal, the tip of the sort of the top tier of science. So this was Susan Wild out of the University of Georgia, who we know, and she's come and presented here in Florida, working with some international researchers on this issue. But what they ended up finding was the toxin itself is not produced by the cyanobacteria in all cases. And it's only produced when bromide is adequate. And so they found that supplementing the cultures with potassium bromide could induce them to produce the toxin, which would then manifest in animals that they tested it in, okay? So they got to digging and they started sampling hydrilla across the Southeast, and they found that hydrilla is actually a bromide accumulator, so that it concentrates bromide in its tissues 20 times greater than the sediments and up to 400 times greater, I think, than in the water column itself. So here you have a plant that naturally accumulates bromide, and that bromide can then be utilized by this cyanobacteria at some point to produce the toxin that can cause problems. Now, again, they identified the toxin. They identified bromide was necessary. They identified hydrilla accumulated bromide. And so they've done a lot of neat work there to show this incredible complex ecological relationship that's going on with this VM and an invasive species like hydrilla and the negative impacts on our native wildlife. So again, all sounding quite horrible. And in the discussion or conclusions of the paper, the researchers do a nice job at expressing concern over anthropogenic sources of bromide. So in the conclusions, they suggest we need to look at anthropogenic sources, human contributed sources of bromide to water bodies where this cyanobacteria is present in the systems, okay? So things like power plants, things like byproducts of fuel waste, and diquat. So diquat is formulated as diquat dibromide. And so they say, hey, we're sort of questioning here and sort of discouraging the use of diquat when we know this is present, okay? And we use diquat, we use it extensively in water bodies here in Florida for floating plant control, for hydrilla control, and even for Cuban bulrush control. So we use a lot of diquat as an aquatic herbicide. And the researchers definitely are saying they are discouraging folks from using that. Now, they're not throwing anybody under the bus, and they're not throwing the aquatic plant management community under the bus either. In fact, they are exceedingly complementary in this paper, stating that over the last 50 years, University of Florida, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Army Corps of Engineers, and other agencies have worked very hard to develop effective IPM strategies for aquatic invasive plant management. So they don't throw us under the bus here. They do suggest not using diquat. Now, the paper itself, the research does not examine diquat as a source of bromide. It does not examine any relationship between hydrilla management and AVM, and it doesn't examine natural bromide levels in relation to hydrilla management. So, bromine, that's an element. So bromide is present naturally at varying levels based upon the geochemistry, or actually the biogeochemistry of the situation. We know that our oceans have a considerable bromide within them. And clearly, this is something that is going to be exceedingly complicated. My colleague, Dr. Brett Boltmeyer, has quickly dug into the EPA data on bromide, looking at how much bromide would be applied via diquat application. And he's found that it really wouldn't exceed background levels of bromide that are currently already present in most cases. The question becomes, though, does the application of diquat release enough bromide that is then subsequently utilized by the cyanobacteria when they're present? Then there's a ton of ecological questions there that are going to come into play in regards to another very complex ecological interaction here. So what we'll say from this paper is, yeah, there's clearly something here. They've identified bromide. We know that bromide is part of diquat in the formulation. And this is, again, something else that needs to be looked at. They have not thrown or attacked aquatic plant management. They have been interviewed, and there are several popular press stories out there now that I suspect they are aggressively attacking aquatic plant management. But again, that goes back to sort of what someone in the media is saying versus what the research actually says at this point. Now, are we going to find out one day that diquat is providing enough bromide to the situation to result in problems? Who knows? We'll see. And I think that we'll be looking at that very soon here. Number one. Number two, does this challenge some massive paradigms we have regarding hydrilla management overall here in Florida? Absolutely. This is likely to stimulate a ton of discussion over the way we approach and manage hydrilla. And exactly what's going on there. I don't even know regarding exactly how many other species we are looking at this disease in. Do snail kites, are they susceptible to it? There's a lot of questions there that could come into play here. So again, this is what science does. It often answers a question and generates more questions. And I think right now we are definitely en route to need a bunch of these questions now answered. You'll remember there have been a lot of accusations regarding glyphosate and phosphorus and inputs enhancing algal blooms based upon glyphosate inputs. In those cases, looking at the data and crunching the numbers on phosphorus in eutrophic systems that are already high in phosphorus, glyphosate's not moving that needle. However, in severely oligotrophic or nutrient poor systems, there's potential for increases there. So we're going to have to look at this with bromide too and find out what's going on there. Okay, so boy, that was about as fast as I could do this, and I really thank you for your patience there. To be happy to stop and open it up to questions. I may or may not be able to answer them, but I hope this sort of gives you a little bit better idea about kind of these things that are hitting the media now regarding both glyphosate and potentially diquat. So let's take questions.
Thanks, Stephen. I think that was really important to share that information. So I threw some links that he was talking about, the publication on glyphosate and manatees. I also threw a link in there reminding folks that Dr. Wild actually presented on a CISMA call back in 2018 on some of this work, especially the Florida and Georgia area work. And so you can listen to that call. And I'll make a note to reach back out to her. Perhaps with this new publication, we can have her back for our CISMA webinars. And then I threw the link to that science publication as well. Stephen, from a layperson's perspective, my first thought would be, well, man, this really means we should get rid of all the hydrilla. Like we should be even more aggressive about getting rid of hydrilla. Is that at all a reasonable conclusion may come out of that?
So eradication of hydrilla in Florida, we do not have the technology to do that right now.
Sure, but I guess what I'm asking is it possible that it could actually boost the
There, as part of the discussion, there will be calls to attempt to eradicate hydrilla. That's going to be met with profound resistance, I suspect, from a lot of folks. We're going to have to figure out what the best path forward here is. And so there's a whole lot we need to know. And we welcome Susan Wild coming back and talking about this. Absolutely. I haven't reached out to her personally yet, but this is really interesting stuff. And we need to dig into this more for sure.
Great, thanks. So we've got some questions in the chat and I see some hands up. So I'll start with some of the chat questions. Going back to the manatees, is there any way to tell whether the glyphosate in the manatees and waterways was from terrestrial or aquatic formulations?
Excellent question. And the answer is we don't know. We don't know where. No, you can't. They would be looking specifically at the free acid of the glyphosate molecule. They would not be looking at any formulative components of that. And so, no, you could not tell or identify based upon this work. There's a lot of concern that glyphosate is finding its way into water sources through urban runoff, through over or misapplication by homeowners along sidewalks, things like that. But no, there's unfortunately no way to ascertain that from these specific studies.
Okay. Linda, did you have a question? And then Carl.
Yeah, I'm just curious of what the next step of research might be with the manatees and the glyphosate, just to kind of piggyback on that.
Linda,
do you know of anything on the horizon, or are there some stuff we need to start to initiate?
Well, so we've reached out to one of our colleagues over who's part of that human environmental toxicology, and I think we've had some initial meetings, and we'll be following up with them. Linda, I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go on the manatee side. Studying manatees is tough enough. Any type of manipulative studies regarding glyphosate are going to be challenging. But this is something that that we'll be thinking hard about, and I don't have a clear answer there. I think one of the things that needs to be done as a follow-up is to go back and look at glyphosate use patterns. So get the glyphosate data around the areas that they were sampling, so that we have a really clear idea about how much glyphosate was applied in or around those water bodies in general, just so that we can understand that first and foremost. I think that would be most important on our side of the equation. That's not directly related to the manatees, but just understanding what of all the known glyphosate applications that are going on, on public waters and public lands surrounding those areas. Okay.
Okay, Carl.
And can I just piggyback on that too?
Oh, please.
I know that we have a whole manatee crew that's looking in at with this too. It might be good to all come to the table and see where our research needs are and make sure that we're, thinking of each other in those.
Absolutely. Clearly we've discovered that that we at the center have been disconnected with this group in human environmental toxicology. And so reaching out and making those inroads, I think is going to be very beneficial to all of us along those lines.
Great, thanks. All right, Carl.
So I have two questions, and then I think the last is a comment.
Carl, you never ask easy questions.
All right. Can you remind me how glyphosate is broken down? I want to say that it does. You said something about a free particle, but I thought maybe photolysis or other ways to break it down.
It is microbially degraded. It is absolutely microbially degraded.
Okay, but there's still something left that could find its way into manatee flesh?
Well, so I mean, it's clearly got a half-life. And so over time, one of the things that they're arguing in the paper is that there's enough glyphosate being applied sort of at many times of the year that is sort of reintroducing new glyphosate, so that you've got the breakdown of the material that's there, but then a new application sort of reinfuses the system with more glyphosate. So sort of this continuous chronic, they're calling chronic exposure. And within the environmental tox literature, some people are calling that, they're dubbing pesticides or other chemicals like this as persistent, when technically they're not persistent, but they are being continuously reapplied so that it's perception of persistence.
Okay. Have there ever been studies on how much is in people? Is it in our plasma, if it's in the food we eat and so forth? And then lastly, I'll just get it out and you can talk, but I want to say that Dr. Wild had said that that bacteria doesn't grow just on hydrilla, that she found it on pondweed as well. So I don't think it's limited to just one SAV. And that's all I got. Thank you, doctor.
Okay, excellent point there. So you're correct there. Some of the earlier studies from Arkansas suggested that it was present on other species. They sort of honed in on the hydrilla aspect of this as being a major player, but I think the presence is definitely there for others too. So it may be that we could eradicate all hydrilla in Florida and not necessarily get rid of this stuff completely. And I suspect a whole lot more work will need to be done to really understand the presence of this specific cyanobacteria. I am not a phycologist, but it's something we need to get the phycologists on board. Perhaps we can get Dr. Laughinghouse to jump all over this if he hasn't already. Regarding sampling in humans, there's been some papers out there that have detected glyphosate. And right now, in terms of going through all the science of all those, I know there have been some decent studies. There's been quite a few very poorly conducted studies. But yes, glyphosate at times has been detected within humans. Almost all of it essentially passes through our bodies unmetabolized through our urine and feces. And so, but I think that somebody has at some point said, yes, we can find glyphosate within humans.
Okay, thank you. So we have one more question in the chat box, and then we'll go to Dexter and Samantha, and then we'll need to move on, but we can definitely, we have Steven's contact information and we can follow up on this. So real quick in the chat box, do you know if they tested for glyphosate in the spring head flows?
In the spring head flows, no, not in, I don't think that was not their sampling sites here. But it would be very interesting to see if they were actually finding it around the spring heads for sure.
Thanks. Okay, Dexter?
This is really more of a comment than a question. And Dr. Enlow, you don't even need to reply to it, but if you reach out to that other group at UF, the one who published this paper, something that coming from an evolutionary biology sort of background in academia is, you have sort of like selection pressures, but then you also want to see what neutral selection does, or like, the absence of natural selection, like what is the random stuff. And, finding glyphosate, in manatee tissue sounds alarming, but, working with that group, I would like to see other things looked at that, I don't want to say are neutral, but are other markers of the environment, like, say microplastics, residues of fertilizers that might be persistent in the environment, polycyclic, what do you call them? The stuff like from car exhaust that runs off in the streets, and runs into waterways. I'd like to see these other things looked at too. So like, when there's glyphosate findings in manatee tissues, like it's put in the broader context of like what human society is putting in the water. So like, maybe the glyphosate alarm won't be as bad. So again, you don't necessarily have to respond to that, but just something sort of like
actually, I want to respond to that too, because number one, I agree with you. What I want to be careful about is throwing that up as a straw man that gives people the perception I'm defending glyphosate. So number one, we're not here to defend glyphosate. Number two, I agree with you though. And in the paper, they do mention a chemical profile in manatees that's already been developed for a number of different toxins, and there are several other things that would be very of interest, that would potentially have even more significant health effects on manatees than glyphosate. So I agree with you there, but again, I don't want to present that as a straw man type argument, to sort of quote unquote defend glyphosate. Good point. I really, really appreciate you letting me come in to the meeting this afternoon and talk about these things. If you have additional questions, email them to me, and we will work to get them answered. This is all a.
Take Sam's question.
Oh, sure.
And then we'll go on. So
Okay.
Sam, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Right. Sometimes it teams out issues between different platforms. But I was just going to make a comment for the Dr. Wild's work for the EM. FWC have supported that project because initially there was something concerned about that in Georgia, the Phycola, that was like before it was even, cyanobacteria was even actually identified. So we have supported that project, I want to say about 10 years now. And so we're working with her, and we actually at FWC have team that work with a lot of our avian biologists, working on an action plan if there's detection of this toxin here that is actually are causing effects on, or prey like snow kite.
Sorry, Sam, you're kind of in and out. I think I got the gist, but you're kind of breaking in and out.
Hold on, let me see. Hold on. All right, can you hear me better?
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay. I just have to disassemble my entire computer. But what I was trying to say basically is that with the Susan Wild, we have worked with her for many years, and what they found in Florida is not the same as what they're finding in the results of Georgia, where they're experiencing a lot of death of the bald eagle due to this toxin. So they have been monitoring big important water bodies in Florida for specific presence and absence of the cyanobacteria that causes the toxin. There are many times they found the presence of the cyanobacteria, but they don't actually find the toxin in Florida. So that's why that's why we don't really see a lot of these snow kites or eagles has been reported been affected by the Pacific toxin.
Yeah, there seems to be some temperature effects that are coming into play with the production of the toxin in cooler waters, especially in the late fall.
Correct. Yeah, that is true. And there's another another part is that you have found apple snails with the toxin in the gut system of them, and that was a concern for snail kites. But snail kites, when they were eating the apple snail, they don't actually eat the whole parts of it. And then the snail kite doesn't eat the whole parts of the apple snail. So as long as we don't eat the guts where the toxins are bioaccumulates, it will not be transferred to the snail kite. Because what they found is that the toxin only bioaccumulates if there is always in the guts. But this apple snails are ones they did in the lab. They're not found in the field, I should say.
I appreciate those comments and clarification, Sam. Thank you so much. And I think this is good indication to get Dr. Wild to come back and give us an update on this. So this is good.
All right, great. Thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely reach back out to her regarding.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. So now we are going to go into our CISMA updates. So what we want to do here is, and you can see, I'm going to, apologies if there's anybody who's on now who's missing here, who is a CISMA lead. I made this based on the registration as of last night, and I saw a few people who hopped on today, so I added them. But if you just registered and hopped on this afternoon and I'm missing you, let me know. But essentially we're going to go, let's see, Do we have anyone from Central Florida CISMA? Allegra, are you on? So basically what we're going to do here is just, like I said, just go through, just introduce yourself. Okay, great. I see Allegra. So just introduce yourself because we do have new people and especially if you are new. And then really just kind of what your CISMA has been up to for the past year, any key highlights, and then kind of what your upcoming plans are. So with that, and so we'll go down this first row and then come back up to the top and go down this row. So I'll kick it over to Allegra with Central Florida CISMA. You guys have been busy.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Emily. I didn't actually have anything prepared. I wasn't aware I'd be giving an update, but
okay.
Happy to do so. So I would also add to our list of leaders, Tina McIntyre from the Extension Office has taken a huge role in our CISMA and really been great. I think we kind of tested or voted on roles for each of the leaders. So I think she's more of the president or something like that. And then I'm the treasurer and Amanda Lindsay's the secretary. So we all kind of have our roles in leadership there. And so I'm the Natural Resources Program Coordinator for Seminole County. And Amanda Lindsay's from UCF. So we kind of have people from a lot of different
Sorry, Allegra, you're starting to break up on us a little bit. Allegra, can you hear me? Sorry.
I don't know if I have a better connection.
There you
Or
are.
I can call in a minute if my connection gets.
Oh, okay. You're back.
Do you want me to call in, Emily, and I can speak later?
Sure, if you think that'd be best.
Okay. I don't really know.
Yeah,
That's
well,
okay.
you're back now. You broke up for a minute, but I can hear you fine now.
Okay. All right, we'll give it a shot. So last year we organized an online workshop, an online grass workshop, and we had between 400 and 500 people attend that workshop. So it was really well received. We did free CEUs, and that was really helpful to have the extension folks involved in that because they are familiar with CEUs. They were set up to do that, especially with the new online system that we're using for these. So that worked out really well. And we're now organizing another online workshop for this fall. And it will actually have to do more with insects than plants. We wanted to mix it up. So I'm sure we'll be sending out the details for that in the next few months. So keep an eye out for the advertisement for that. But yeah, that's pretty much what we've been up to. We are currently now having weekly meetings, or not weekly, monthly. But it's so much easier with it being online to be able to meet regularly, and we keep them short. We may cut that back as we need to, but right now it's been helpful, and we have, I think, even sometimes 15 to 20 people on these meetings. So we've done a good job of reaching out and getting other folks involved.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep.
All right. East Central Florida CISMA, Bonnie Wells and Carl Green.
Hi, I don't think Bonnie is on the call today.
No problem.
And I'm going to set the bar really low for every other CISMA because we don't and have not done much over the past 6 months. I think Bonnie is applying for a grant from FISC, formerly FLEPSI, to make some identification cards, but otherwise, yeah, East Central Florida CISMA is lacking in terms of projects and probably participation as well. So nothing really to report, and I apologize for that.
Not necessary. That's totally fine. Like I said, it's been kind of a difficult and a pause time for all of us. So it's just good to get back together and introduce ourselves. Carl, just tell me real quick, like who you are and what your role is.
So I'm co-chair. I work for Florida Fish and Wildlife in the invasive plant management section. I work out of my residence in Brevard County, and I'm responsible for plant management on the St. Johns River and other associated water bodies.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we can go down to First Coast Invasive Working Group. I think we have Caitlin and Jessica with us this afternoon. We heard from Jessica this morning. She's our U.S. Army Corps rep for the FISP. And Caitlin, so yeah, just introduce yourselves. Tell us real quickly who you're with, and then about your CISMA.
Hey everyone, my name is Caitlin Dietz and I co-chair the First Coast Invasive Working Group with Jessica, and I'm based out of the GTM Research Reserve in St. Johns County.
And I'm Jessica Spencer. I work for the Army Corps of Engineers up in Jacksonville. And Caitlin, I'm just going to mention a couple of things that we've done lately. We had sort of a agreement with Walter Jones. Their Walter Jones Historic Park is a city park in Jacksonville. They're getting grant funding to do some native plantings. So we kind of adopted them for the COVID year, and we did a couple of work days out there. We had to reschedule some stuff due to weather, but we also got the Native Plant Society to do a volunteer day to help them tackle some of their camphor, ardesia, Caesar weed. They also have some air potato and some tuberous sword fern and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, we were cleaning up an area that they will be planting this spring with some natives. So it was a good opportunity to be able to get out and actually do something during COVID. So anyway, that was one of the things that we were able to do. We've also had some virtual meetings. And then Caitlin has actually been heading up an effort that we're trying to develop to put together some training for like private landscape companies to do invasive species control work. And so I am going to let her speak more about that. I don't know, Emily, if you want to do that now or.
Oh, Jessica, sorry, I think I accidentally muted you when I tried to unmute myself. But yes, let's go ahead and do that. I just wanted to add really quickly the project that First Coast is working on with Walter Jones Park. The grant that they received it's through a Garden Club of America. So that connection was partially through the longstanding work First Coast Invasive Working Group has done with their air potato roundup, but then also strengthened with our partnership with the Weed Wrangle, which is a program of the Garden Club of America. So it's really cool when all of those partners come together. But yeah, Caitlin, let's go ahead and share that and talk about how that can potentially be a greater statewide CISMA effort.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably several years ago, I know when Emily was coastal training coordinator at the GTM Research Reserve, we had a volunteer pepper busting team. And it was a volunteer-led effort, and they would go out and take down the pepper, the Brazilian pepper that was everywhere, or starting to come into the St. Johns County area. Over time, that effort was continued, and then in probably the last 4 years or so, the Brazilian pepper really started to come in with full force, and our volunteers weren't able to keep up with everything. And so the Brazilian pepper program started to slow down and is no longer active, unfortunately. But over the past, I would say, year, maybe 2 or 3 years, Jessica and I have received many calls from private landowners and homeowners that the Brazilian pepper busters had assisted several years ago, saying, the Brazilian pepper is back. I need you to come back out and take care of it. And it was just something that we don't have the resources at this time, or the manpower, or the time to go out to all of these private residences and help remove the Brazilian pepper. And so that really got us having this starting this conversation. Okay, who can make money off of this and get out there, or who is out there already on these private homeowner those private properties. And so we are working with a few other folks from the First Coast Invasive Working Group to develop a landscapers course focused on invasive species. So thinking about, how if you're applying fertilizer on, on properties, you go through the green industry best management practices. Maybe having something similar to that, where if you are a landscaper, a tree removal service, going through a course to learn how to identify invasive species, the common ones that we're seeing in St. Johns County and the First Coast Invasive Working Group area, how to identify them, how to remove them, and how to replant with natives, but also supporting them with selling this as a service for their clientele. So that way we know that, if these landscaping professionals are out on a property and they identify an invasive species, they have what they need in their tool belt to have that conversation with their clients and also help remove that invasive plant. We're in the very early phases of this project. We've been talking about it for probably about a year and a half. But in January, really started having some conversations about it. And so at this point in time, we've met a couple of times. We've identified that we need to do a needs assessment or a survey of all of the professional landscaping services that are in the Northeast Florida area to see what they know about invasive species, what they can do about them. If we were to offer a course like this, what kind of incentives might they need? Are there specific lists or acknowledgments that attract them as landscaping companies, or that that help market themselves a little bit better than other companies that are out there? And really starting to get an outline of this. And through those conversations, it's become more than just targeting those landscaping professionals, but also trying to help support native nurseries and really just getting some more information and content and resources out there. So that way, when Jessica and I or anybody in the invasive working group gets a call to say, hey, can you come out here and take care of this for us? We have something in our tool belt where we can say, unfortunately, we're not able to at this time, but if you go to this list, there are plenty of providers who have gone through a formal invasive species removal training that you are welcome to reach out to. And so if you are interested in being a part of this conversation, we would love to talk with you about it. If you have examples of something similar within your CISMA, we'd love to hear any successes or any challenges or recommendations that you have. And I think that's, I don't want to take up too much time, but I think that, Jessica, anything else?
I think I would just add, one of the things that we considered, in developing this is that, me as a Fed, a lot of us that work for different, government agencies, we technically aren't allowed to recommend, any companies. And so that's one of the big struggles that we've had. Like, even if we knew such and such company had, has experience, whatever, we can't really direct anyone to those resources. So by providing a training where we're not saying, oh, you should use this company, we're just saying this is a list where people have gone through the training, we're confident in their abilities to identify, they've been taught how to properly control. It just offers us the ability to have something to point at when we get these phone calls, because it does happen pretty frequently. I'm sure that a lot of other CISMAs probably get similar phone calls about private properties. So, and even pairing this with some of the private landowner resources, maybe that's a space where we could list this, list of companies that have gone through the training. But anyway, we're excited about this moving forward. We're developing a survey, that we're going to send out to some of the companies. And so if anybody is interested in providing input or feedback or, any suggestions, recommendations, we are definitely open to that. We're very early in the process, so you're not going to hurt anyone's feelings. It's not going to set us back. We welcome the feedback. And that will turn it over to the next group.
Great, thanks, ladies. So I popped Caitlin and Jessica's emails into the chat box there. So if you would like to connect with them on that, please do. Very exciting project. Looking forward to hearing more about the progress there. All right, Heartland CISMA, Cheryl, are you with us?
I am. So I'm Cheryl Millett with the Nature Conservancy, and I noticed there were a few others from the Heartland CISMA on this call. Brooke Coulter, who applied for a CISMA grant for some boot brush scrapers and educational materials. So we're hoping that will pan out. Trina Nolan from Bach Tower is here, and Mike Sawinski too. And I hear you, Carl, in feeling a little bit like, well, what do I have to contribute here? Because one of the challenges we've had is our biggest value to our CISMA members has been in-person workshops and field trips. And of course, we're not doing that. And trying to pivot to doing virtual activities has been a challenge. There seem to be a lot of virtual offerings out there, and we don't want to just duplicate what other people are doing. And so I was really excited about this CISMA workshop to talk about hosting virtual events. And just as an aside, we also in our area have the Lake Wales Ridge Ecosystem Working Group, which has had similar challenges and which I also chair. And we just recently did our first virtual activity, and actually someone on this call, Ginger Morgan, I think she's on this call, was part of it. We were talking about prescribed burn associations. And we did that with the help of a partner, Archbold Biological Station, that has really been uniquely poised, I think, in this time to do online activities because they invested in high-speed internet at their station. So they helped us with doing that. Right now, we have a survey out for our members asking what are the things that they would like to see at this time. And so we're looking for that kind of input. But I am really happy to be here to hear from everybody else and about what you're doing. So thanks for the inspiration. And and next is North Central Florida CISMA, I see, with Ginger.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
So next up, Ginger Morgan and John Herbert with North Central Florida. And again, just really quickly introduce yourselves as co-chairs and kind of tell us what you do and then what's going on with North Central Florida.
Sure. I'm Ginger Morgan. I'm with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the Landowner Assistance Program here in North Central Florida. And both myself and John Herbert, who is also on this call, co-chair the North Central CISMA, and I think that we work as a really great team. It's amazing how much we've done in this past year. John, I don't want to put you on the spot because I told you I was going to talk about us, but I just want to make sure you introduce yourself first.
Well, thank you, Ginger. I appreciate that. Yeah, John Herbert. I guess I'm kind of, I suspect I'm unique among the people on this call. I don't do this kind of work for a living. I'm an interested private landowner and just interested in trying to help out and move these efforts to control invasives forward. So whatever I can do to make that happen is, I'm glad to contribute what I can.
Okay, so as far as our CISMA this past year, like I said, John and I have been serving as co-chairs, but we certainly don't do it alone. We have many very active partners, both with FWC, University of Florida, IFAS, and other organizations around us. So I don't want to leave anybody out, but between everybody, I mean, nobody, as y'all guys know, you don't do it on your own. But we've been able to hold regular meetings on the third Wednesday of the month at 3:30. And that was one of our biggest things that, we were able to develop is, hey, we are an organization. We will be meeting on the third Wednesday of the month. We've been pretty consistent about that, except for in December, it kind of got away from us. But we also realized that, hey, people are really wanting to have some speakers and some opportunities for education. So we started developing some speakers within like every third meeting. We were able to have Dexter come on and talk with us. Next month, we're going to have Dr. Bumpmeyer join us in a partnership with Tree Farm, University of Florida, and the Landowner Assistance Program, the North Central Florida CISMA, to do a pesticide workshop. It'll be during our regular CISMA meeting, so we'll be hosting it, but it's definitely an open partnership where Chris Demers with the Florida Land Steward partnership's going to help us reach a very large audience so that we can meet the tree farm standards that just got updated in 2021, where they're now required to keep records on pesticides, not just herbicides, insecticides, all those other types of sides. They do need to start keeping records on that. We're going to assist them and tell them why it's important. It's not just something that, hey, you have to do, but hey, it's going to benefit you and your stewardship. So that'll be the third Wednesday of next month. But with that though, I mean, I just want to express, how important it is that during this time of COVID that we are still reaching people. We've been able to develop these informational brochures. We call them the EDRR series that introduce, early detection, rapid response. And it's basically, we've been doing it as a monthly thing where we're providing them out to the group landowners within our group and later distributing it through our CISMA distribution list, where we introduce the concept first of EDRR. And then every month we're highlighting a certain species. So we've done old world climbing fern, Japanese ardisia, Brazilian pepper. Right now we're working on sweet tanglehead, and we'll just keep going month to month. And the landowners are really enjoying these. But with that, we're realizing, hey, we need a place to put these. And we've been working on our CISMA website for the updates. We're the second in line to get the new updates after Six Rivers. And that's been put on hold a little bit. So, just trying to prioritize where we need to get this information out. And we realize it's been pretty difficult to get people to submit us information for a website to put up on a website that we're not really working on yet. But, it's been a little bit frustrating with that aspect of it. But at the same time, if we can get all that information together, and if anybody has any really good resources to put on our website, that would really help us out. Because once we're ready to do the go, we want to have that information in place. But right now, if you were to pull up our website, there's a 2019 flyer of a great meeting that we hosted. But we really need to get that information current so people see that we're an ongoing active organization, because we've been kicking butt lately with a lot of stuff that we're doing. We did submit a application for the grant that was the FISP grant. Bradford County Soil and Water Conservation District submitted a grant to treat tropical soda apple and some pasture lands along a rail trail in Bradford County. And with that, they've provided an item in that where they will just purchase herbicides that we can start working with and provide private landowners, kind of like as a pilot program. And we would like to expand some type of program like that across our region and then also across the state, baby steps. So any of the CISMAs that want to work with me or that you've already tried to develop some plans, I've talked to Osceola already. I've had to actually get herbicide to landowners and the challenges that we might be facing with that. I would certainly appreciate that. I've worked a lot with Linda King and David O'Neill trying to get an understanding of FWC's low bid contracts and the public lands herbicide bank that they have. to see if maybe we can try to parallel or get something going similar to that, but for private lands. So working on that. Also discussing those kind of opportunities with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Partners Program. Unfortunately, they can't just go out and purchase herbicide, but they're very active in wanting us to connect landowners to them, that if there's any type of invasive plant treatment that needs to be done in an area, especially if it's tied to a federal listed species, they'll work with that. So if anybody on the call needs assistance with private landowners, give your local U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Partners Program a call, because I mean, there's money there and they're able to help. Right now we're working on a credit grant application, trying to get some stickers made with a QR code so that we can start promoting our CISMA a little bit more. Hopefully we'll start getting into the face-to-face workshops and we'll have things to be able to give away. But that would have a QR code that would go to our website that we're looking at updating. So we've been really busy. Is there anything else, John, that you'd like to add?
Well, I made a list, not realizing that you were on the call. I started making a list of things to talk about, and you've checked off every one of them.
Okay.
I
That's why
would
we
like
work good together.
Yeah, well, I'd like to again encourage anybody that has experience with organizing an herbicide bank to get in touch with Ginger and me, because I want to take advantage of what works and avoid the pitfalls, what doesn't. So if you've got some experience with herbicide banks, please get in touch with us and let us know. I was really interested to hear Caitlin Dietz talking about the landowner, I'm sorry, the landscaper course that you guys are envisioning, because one of the things that I would hope that our CISMA and other CISMAs could do is provide some assistance to residential landowners. I know that a lot of us deal with natural lands with either state lands or conservation lands, or maybe with private landowners who own relatively large parcels of property. But I think there's an opportunity to make some real headway with private residential landowners. So I was really interested to hear about your course, and whether it's through affiliation with the North Central Florida CISMA or just on my own. I'm going to reach out to you because I want to know more about what you guys are doing. And I want to thank Emily for pulling this CISMA meeting together, because I'm learning a lot about what other people are doing, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to learn from each other, and I appreciate that. I think Ginger, you covered everything else I had.
Good, thank you.
All right, thanks, y'all. So one of the things I'm hearing coming out of this, and we're going to talk a little bit when we get into our virtual meetings overview, is it sounds like there may be a real need to be more intentional about sharing some of these broader initiatives that the different CISMAs are working on. So I'm making some notes, and whether it's through a page on our website, or I think there needs to be somewhere that you guys can all go and see what some of these broader efforts are. So one, we're not, starting from scratch duplicating, but also because a lot of these things can absolutely be replicated on a regional level or statewide. And so that's definitely something I'll put on my radar to kind of be more intentional about, and making sure we continue to make those connections. All right, so Dana, I feel like I've put you on the spot twice today, and I really apologize for that. I'm wondering if you would be willing to hop on and just give us a quick update on Osceola CISMA. Cody Miller wasn't able to join us today, and Dana kind of is always there, such an MVP with Osceola. So would you mind if I just kind of, again, I know, apologize for just like leaning on you so much today, but just
no worries.
Yeah,
no worries, Emily. I'm Dana Sussman. I'm a senior forester with the Florida Forest Service. I'm in cooperative forestry assistance, and my areas of coverage are Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Brevard counties. And Carl, I put my contact information in the chat because I'd like to get involved with East Central Florida CISMA So if you could include me in your mailings, I'd appreciate it. I am speaking on behalf of Cody Miller, who's our very inspiring chair and has really motivated the CISMA over the last few years. We do meet every other month, second Wednesday of the month. We're a small group. Some meetings we have maybe 10 people, but for the most part, we're a core group of probably 5 or 6 people. About this time last year, we were getting ready to kick off our Brazilian Pepper Blitz, which was going to be a pilot program for residential properties in Osceola County to help them get control of and eradicate Brazilian pepper. So it was a 3-prong program. We're going to teach a class that they had to attend about identifying invasives, specifically Brazilian pepper, and how to control it. We were then going to give them a small quantity of herbicide and then follow that up once they could show that they'd removed it or controlled it, a tree. And this was going to be a cooperative program with Osceola County Extension, Osceola County Natural Lands, and the Florida Forest Service. Because of COVID, we just stuck with step 1. We did offer the class. Krista Stump, who's the natural resource agent, and I taught the class. But we've had to postpone steps 2 and 3, but we're hoping with some grant funding and county funding to April, May, June of this year, try to jumpstart it again. So I think it was John who was asking or making the comment that, you know, we do focus on natural lands a lot, and maybe residential properties would be a good target. So we're trying that here in Osceola County, slowly, but hopefully surely in the next couple months. In January, every year we host an herbicide workshop focused on natural lands so that managers can get some of their core CEUs. We did decide that doing that virtually probably wasn't going to be very effective, so we've postponed till January of 2022. And then the last week in February, which I think was NISA week 1, we partnered with Osceola Extension, who typically have their spring plant festival that week, and couldn't do it, but we decided to reach out to residents and offer some classes. And we had 3 classes a day, and one time period was dedicated to talking about invasive plants and the benefits of natives. And then the other classes were focused more on gardening. It was called Back to Nature, and we had great participation, and it was really good to partner. So we're hoping to do something similar next February. So all in all, I feel like we've gotten some things done, some good things, and realized that your audience, when it's virtual, can be from anywhere, you know, not even just Florida. So that's about it. Thank you, Emily.
Awesome, thank you. All right, moving over into the Panhandle. I know we have Rick with us. I'm not sure if Crystal Walsh is on, but Rick, how you guys doing over there?
Doing good. We're doing good. I don't think Crystal's on, and I'm gonna go ahead and apologize. I think it's calming down now, but I had a landscaping guy going nuts back here, my dog barking. So if it gets crazy, I'll apologize early.
No worries.
Okay, like everybody else, COVID is, you know, kind of basically we've been silenced by it for a variety of reasons. Meetings, different people couldn't use different sort of platforms for meetings and couldn't, so we just kind of went silent. But that doesn't mean things haven't been going on. Most of what I'm going to report on are some things that we did do as a group via email, and then some things that I've just kind of been pushing forward from my own work. I am Rick O'Connor. I'm a UF extension agent here in Escambia County. I'm the Sea Grant agent, so I work with saltwater marine and estuarine stuff. But and Crystal, my cohort, is with FWC. And then we got a big group of all the agencies you guys have mentioned are part of this. Dexter is real active with our group. And actually, that was one of the first things we tried to tackle last year, was to come up with an EDRR list for our specific CISMA. For our folks. And so there was a lot of ping ponging back and forth. Dexter was a big help on that, trying to get that list correct. And then we put together something that we called the Dirty Dozen. These are these well-established ones that are just problematic that the public reaches out and has questions about. So we've got those 2 lists. And right now I'm kind of putting together a list of short fact sheets about each of those. We put one out a month. I heard Ginger mention something. We're doing something very similar. One on the Dirty Dozen and one on our EDRR. And again, it's specifically for our CISMA. So we're putting those out. Hopefully they're being used and are useful to folks. The beach vitex is a thing I've been working on up here. It's not spread all over Florida, but it is in the panhandle. So one of the things we wanted to do last year and were able to do was reach out to all the master gardeners along the coast of the panhandle to make them aware of the problem. And hopefully they would go out and look for it and report it. And at least we would know where it is, so then we can turn around and deal with it. We did have a big increase in Okaloosa County, which is the Destin area, if you're familiar with that. But most of that actually came from one of our CISMA members, Jeremy Preston, who was with the U.S. Air Force there at Eglin Air Force Base, was the one who kind of spearheaded much of that. So I don't know how much they got out, the other master gardeners. I've already reached out to them again this year, and we'll see what happens with that. We also have a giant salvinia issue here in Escambia County in particular, where I'm at, and there's some on the east end of the CISMA. And as far as I know, that's it for the state. So we're trying to work with FWC and Derek Fuss, who's out of Panama City. We submitted a small grant to our local estuary program to fund an education thing, because it looks like right now the removal treatment is kind of doing well. It's the education of the issue that we're having some stumbling blocks with. We unfortunately didn't get that grant, but I'm working with Escambia County right now, and we're going to be working with Derek also to put together an education thing at little or no money. We're going to see if we can pull this off and try to educate the public, put together citizen science, and try to go out and identify sites where this giant salvinia might be. Another creature that has popped up here and has developed a new program, Sheila Dunning and I are both with the CISMA. She's also IFAS Extension. We have found some Cuban tree frogs in the Bay County area, numerous ones, and we're not sure. We've been working closely with Dr. Steve Johnson to assess whether or not this is an actual first breeding population up here. We are monitoring it with someone. This is at Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City. Someone there has been monitoring this for us. And they did make it through the winter. We were curious. It got very cold up here in the Panhandle this year. So we were curious whether they would even survive it. But she did say the numbers are way down, but there are some adult individuals still there. And so there's no evidence of breeding yet, but we've got that one on. And we're starting a program called Hitchhikers to educate the public up here about invasive creatures such as the Cuban tree frog and the agami and some other invasive animals from Central and South Florida that might be hitchhiking on plants coming from the nurseries in your part of the state up to our part of the state, and maybe getting loose. So we're trying to get that kicked off. It's kind of my lap right now, and it's moving kind of slow, so many things going on, but we're trying to get that going. For NESAW, we did a couple of short videos just to introduce them to these topics I just went over, some real quick 1-2 minute videos. We did try to kick off something called the Air Potato Roundup. We do know that UF has been trying to grow more of the beetles for the air potato, but they've lost some funding, and so they're looking for the bulbules. So we've been trying to round up bulbules to send to Gainesville to keep that project going. Here in our area, it hasn't gone too well. We've done it 2 years in a row. We haven't really collected a whole lot, but it's gone real well in Panama City. So we hope to really spearhead that and make it bigger next year. And likewise, again, with all the other issues going on with COVID, we were hit by Hurricane Sally. Everybody in the state has to deal with storms, but unfortunately in our case, we have a new bridge that's being built, and the company doing it had not secured their barges. We had 42 barges loose during the storm, damaged the bridge. And so the bridge is out, no one can get to the beach. And a lot of our weed wrangle just collapsed on that one. We tried the virtual one, but unfortunately it didn't catch. So we're gonna try, that competition is an interesting idea. We'll get with our folks quick and see what we can put together on that. We have found lionfish inside Pensacola Bay, just inside the pass. So I'm working with a nonprofit group here, a group of divers that are going to be doing surveys throughout the bay. We are working on the permitting right now. It's been touchy it's in the national seashore. So it's been kind of touchy as far as spearing and removing. They've got a lot of rules about that. So at the moment, it looks like we're not going to be able to remove them right now. But we are going to at least get in there and see how bad the problem has spread inside the bay. We are got plans for Fleesaw. Honestly, I've seen the list that Emily gave me today, which I will share with everybody in our group, but I was kind of focusing on removals. Since we did a lot of videos with NESAW, I'm kind of hoping to get folks out in the field and do some removals, focusing on Vitex, but probably some others. And we'll see how it goes. We're slowly getting green lights up here for people to be able to get out and move around. Lots of folks are getting vaccinated. I've been vaccinated, so I'm clear. But we still have a lot of protocols from UF we have to adhere to, as does FWC and a lot of other partners. Ed O'Daniel, who's one of our partners up here, he works with the Longleaf Alliance, and he spearheaded a program last year treating Kogan grass in Santa Rosa and Okaloosa County, specifically Kogan grass. And I know he met a lot. We didn't have a meeting, so I'm not sure how many acres he treated last year, but I know he did get out, and I've seen little bullets that he's added again this year. So I know that project's moved on. We hope to continue a Halloween. We've been doing that. We're looking at that probably in October. We're going to do something for Halloween. And as Ginger mentioned, I think we're Six Rivers is trying to get our website up and running. And again, this year, everything's gone kind of silent. So nothing has really moved forward on that yet. But that's what's going on up here in Six Rivers.
All right, thank you so much, Rick. I accidentally muted you again. I'm sorry, I did that to Jessica earlier too, just trying to unmute myself. But that's awesome, lots going on and good to hear. So thank you. Next up, we've got our super newbies to the Southwest Florida CISMA. So Dan, please introduce yourself again, and then also reintroduce your extremely new co-chair.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Dan Quinn. I'm the lead non-native biologist for Southwest Florida for Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Been in this role for about 4 years now, and my job pretty much specifically focuses on non-native wildlife, mostly terrestrial wildlife. I do a little bit with fish as well, but we have a separate fish biologist for that. So unlike a lot of you in here, I don't have a lot of experience with the invasive plants, but certainly I'm well aware of them. Anyway, so yes, within the last couple hours, we got a new co-chair on. Wade, again, has taken on a new position in Oklahoma. We're very happy for him, and he's been very helpful in getting everything started up since Aaron and Crystal stepped down. But now Mitch is going to be helping out too, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Mitch Berezowski. I was the co-chair for the animal subcommittee with Dan for the last couple of years, and I happen to have been across the hall from Aaron Myers, and then now I got a new job and I'm across the hall from Crystal Segura, so I've got a lot of experience at my at hand to ask any questions. I'm really excited to start some new projects with CISMA, continue the ones that have been working well, and I am a land manager with the Collier County Conservation Collier Program.
Yeah, so obviously we haven't done a whole lot as the co-chairs just yet. However, we have done a little bit. First, just to look back into the past year or so, certainly COVID put a damper on things. Mitch and I were planning a fish roundup last year that had to be postponed due to the pandemic. And unfortunately, because things are still not great this year, we had to postpone this year as well. That was something that we had a lot of success with in the previous year. So I guess, what was that, 2019? Removed over 2,000 pounds of fish in a weekend with our participants and actually beat CISMA. So we were pretty proud of that. But as far as this year's gone, we did have our virtual symposium that Aaron and Crystal organized. It was a half-day event this time around as opposed to a whole-day event in person. And of course, it was virtual. And so it was at that time that they stepped down and Wade and I stepped in. And so at that time, we started to talk, Wade and I, about some ideas that we had, and we started to meet up with some of the neighboring CISMAs. So CISMA we met with, and Suncoast CISMA we just met with just last week. And so we were just talking about different ideas, different challenges, because we don't want to try to recreate the wheel, but we certainly want to push forward with as much energy as we have. I'd like to share some of those ideas with you guys as well, so that if anybody has any experience with these or any concerns with them. So some of the things that we have talked about is doing a little bit more with outreach, especially with school groups. So we're thinking more using the virtual platform, since schools are pretty comfortable with that now, and it's an easier way to get members of the CISMA to be able to participate in those outreach opportunities if they can do it during work hours or something like that, or off work but at home or something. We're trying to figure out some more engagement opportunities with our members to try to just get more buy-in from the members in the steering committee to show up to events. And so one of the things we're looking at is trying to mix different aspects of education and field days in with a social component. So looking at sort of a county by county, maybe on a quarterly basis, where it's open to everybody, but it's specifically open to the members in that specific county, just because they're physically close by and can more than likely attend. I had a suggestion from the Suncoast CISMA about a event that they hosted that involved learning about bats and then going out for beverages afterwards or something like that. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea. It's also a way I'm hoping to engage with some organizations that maybe don't have a lot of members in the CISMA, but have a lot of people in them. For example, Audubon. Certainly, I'm in contact with those people just as part of my normal job pretty regularly. So getting more of them to show up by making it sort of a fun event. Is kind of what I'm thinking. We're also interested in funding and grant acquisition, but we have not we haven't figured anything out yet that we should try to apply for, what projects we might necessarily want. Again, I'm very focused on the wildlife aspect, so I'm certainly interested in what the rest of the CISMA has to say. We're going to be sending out surveys to our CISMA members, especially the steering committee, to see what they want to get out of the CISMA, see if they have any ideas as well, or any challenges that they have. I'm interested in working on an MOU that's similar to what eCISMA has in place for early detection, rapid response, specifically toward wildlife species. A lot of times, I pretty much coordinate wildlife response throughout the state, and if we can't get somebody out within 30 minutes or an hour, it's usually a lot harder to catch because they like to move around. So having people on standby that can help with those responses if it's in their neck of the woods is really helpful to us. So we're going to look at that as well. We've also talked a little bit about doing some sort of multi-regional event with multiple CISMAs. We introduced this to both eCISMA and Suncoast CISMA. They both seemed receptive to the idea of it, at least. So, for example, both eCISMA and Southwest Florida CISMA run the different fish roundups right now. There might be a way where we can actually use the same rules, but still have our own fish roundup so that we can at least announce them together, put them during the same time period and everything. And at least then we can spread the message a little bit louder. So if anybody's interested in that as well, we're certainly interested in talking about it. There's definitely logistics to consider, but yeah, I think that's about it that I have on my list. But another thing I'm working on with Emily right now actually is some education materials. Thanks again, Emily, for being willing to do some of the graphic design on that, because I'm not gifted in that department. But we want to use this, or I specifically wanted to use it for Facebook groups that are reporting high priority non-natives, or their members are, but we have no way of getting our contact information to them professionally. For example, Florida Herpers Facebook group has reported now multiple tegus in some really strange locations where we'd like to get some more information to see if we need to respond, or if see if something else is going on. So it's kind of like I've got one hotline / website information, but at a FISP or CISMA level, because those groups aren't real fond of FWC right now, unfortunately. So that's about it. I don't know, Mitch, if you have anything else, but that's what we're looking at.
No, I don't have anything else yet.
Only 2 hours in, you don't have anything? Come on.
Letting everyone down. I'm so sorry. I think I better resign.
All right, well, thank you so much, guys. A lot of great energy, and thank you both for coming in, and welcome to the group. And as I mentioned when we got started this afternoon, really this is such a wonderful network of people to work with. So we're so glad to have you, and look forward to working with you. We have 2 more CISMA updates, so about 5 minutes each for Suncoast and Treasure Coast, and then I probably have about 15 to 20 minutes at least of the virtual workshop stuff. So we're running a little bit, went early this morning and a little behind this afternoon, but that's okay because this is great stuff, and we can always also share materials afterwards. So one quick note, one thing that is coming up for me again, just being more intentional about sharing these broader impact projects. If you're on this call today and you are not on our listserv, so I have a few primary email lists that I use. I email sometimes the FISP steering committee on their own with FISP business. Oftentimes I'll email the FISP steering committee and just the CISMA leads if it's really administrative stuff. And then my other one, my more broad one, is the CISMA listserv. This is where my CISMA call announcements, monthly event announcements go out. And this listserv, it's not real spammy. There's not a ton going out on it, but I want to encourage everybody, if you have an update on any of these big projects you want to share with everybody, you are welcome to send it out via this listserv as well. So again, we want to keep it, from becoming overly spammy. We're not trying to, we all have enough email, but again, this is one tool we can use when you are working on some of these broader projects you're talking about. If you have an update or you want to ask questions or get input, this is available to you as well. It doesn't have to be only me sending things out. All right, so thank you. So moving on, Suncoast CISMA, I believe we have Ray Vincent with us.
I'm here. Hopefully my mic's doing all right.
Sounds good.
Yeah, pretty similar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Pretty similar to the other CISMAs, shut down in-person events. We still had our virtual symposium. We tried to focus on wildlife, lionfish, etc., in order to get more of a general public involvement and viewership. And we put those up on YouTube afterwards, since we're in Zoom anyway, and we could record them. That was nice. We scrapped our grass ID class, which is normally overfull, looking for people just begging for seats. And we did, so far, we've got 2 grass ID videos where they're exotics and lookalikes, real short, with voiceover and some video in the field of Kogan grass, or I think itch grass is the other one we finished, as well as some of the native sort of lookalikes, at least to novices. And yeah, we have Catherine Clements came on, I think over a year ago, but she's my co-chair, our co-chair. But that's most of what we've had going on. We've been trying to get more general public involvement, more involvement from the steering committee or from other agencies. We've kind of always had that trouble with the split north and south, where Pinellas and Hillsborough have a tough time traveling down to Sarasota and Bradenton across the bay, and vice versa. But we're hoping to get rolling again better here, and really interested in that First Coast horticulture tree worker training for exotics. I'd be happy to help with that. And if you don't have anybody from IFAS, I already emailed you copying Alyssa, who's our hort agent, also my wife, because that's just right up her alley as far as developing curriculum for that sort of thing. And I'm definitely interested as well as an arborist and an invasive species person. Probably some other interest from our board members. But I guess that's the main thing that I have to share that's really helped us along lately, is getting IFAS staff involved, local extension agents. Because like Dan, you said you had issues with getting help for graphic design. UF has a whole department or team for that an agent can just come up with the language for, and they make an awesome infographic in a pretty quick turnaround. So having a extension agent, either natural resources or horticulture, in your team as a CISMA, very helpful for us so far. I think that covers it. I'm also gonna have to bug out shortly here because I have another engagement. But yeah, that covers Suncoast, I think.
All right, great. Thanks, Ray. And Alex, are you here? Are you there?
Hey, I'm here. Let me see. Okay.
There you are.
So I'm Alex Onisco. I am the co-chair for the Treasure Coast CISMA, and I work for South Florida Water Management District as an invasive species biologist in upland and wetland systems. The Treasure Coast CISMA was, yeah, we took some time off in 2020. Things slowed down for us. I would say our biggest strengths as a CISMA are our big group work days, which we would generally kind of rotate throughout the CISMA footprint. So since in-person meetings and work days were not a safe thing to do in 2020, we put those on hold and we focused more on our private lands projects that were funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Partners Program. Unfortunately, we had one landowner decide to sell their property, so we had to pull out of that project, which was just too bad because there's a nice scrub parcel that's pretty rare down here, and it was a property that had a lot of gopher tortoises, and we had already gotten the Florida Forest Service to help us out and do some work over there, but understanding the landowner's situation, we just kind of backed out, but we were able to put that funding towards two other projects. One is a continuation of a project we've been working a long time on. It's a Boy Scout camp called Tonakita. We were able to do some mechanical shredding of invasive species and then follow up with ground treatments. And then the other project is getting a local condo association to remove the scavola on their dune systems. Let's see. So we've kind of been going forward with that. And then we were just really, since there were so many virtual trainings and seminars, we were just kind of disseminating those to our group. This year we got together, the steering committee got together and kind of discussed how to go forward with 2021. And we decided to continue to temporarily postpone our group work days and instead shift to more virtual trainings. So we sent out a survey to the CISMA, and based on the responses we got as far as what members are interested in learning about, when they'd be available and for what lengths of time, we were able to develop a bi-monthly virtual either training, field trips, or small 1 to 2 hour little workshops for our members. So the first one kicks off in April, and it'll be a virtual field trip that focuses on how Palm Beach County tackled a very highly visible EDRR issue. And then along those lengths, or that same line, we were able to do EDR plant highlights. And it sounds like a lot of other folks are doing the same thing or something similar, where we're sending out once a month just a highlight of EDR species, just to remind our members. We updated our EDR list, I believe, 2 years ago. And so keeping that fresh in people's minds and making sure that they know, we want them to recognize these EDR species, but it's not something they see all the time or remember to go look at the list and study. So it's just a nice way to refresh everybody's memory. And eventually we talked about maybe trying to get a FISC grant to have them printed and used as outreach materials. So that's kind of where this Treasure Coast CISMA is at right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So I know some folks are going to have to jump off here. So I want to just kind of, I guess, try to share what my main goals for this type of virtual events hosting conversation would be about. And I think there's two main things. One is we just wanted to make sure you guys had the resources you needed, kind of at your fingertips to host an event and put it together. And two, to talk about this fact that because we have gone virtual, most of our stuff now, anyone from anywhere in the state can participate, and that opens up the door to a lot more cross collaboration amongst the CISMAs. So I put together some slides just sharing kind of how to start with getting an event going. And I'll go through these really quick. So we'll probably go another 15 minutes for folks who can hang on. And for folks who can't, I think what I'll do is I'll follow up with this on a CISMA call, as well as I'm going to be out of the office for the rest of this week, but I will, you'll start seeing some follow-up from me next week with these materials. So when hosting a Zoom event, the first thing you got to do is decide what platform you're going to use. And so one of the most popular, the platform we're on today, is Zoom. It probably is the most user-friendly. Typically, hosts can, a typical license like that an agency might have can host up to 100 to 300 participants. There's also licenses that allow you to go to larger groups, and the Zoom webinar option, which is an additional cost that your organization may or may not be set up for. Takes you to even more groups. It's easy to do breakouts. You can pre-select your breakouts. You can randomize them. You can allow participants to choose. Teams is another one that's gaining popularity, and people are using Teams for a lot of different reasons. I personally really like the Teams platform because I've been working really closely with IFAS IT, and we've been building a communication platform within UF IFAS. So I've done a lot of work within Teams, not specific to meetings, but just its ability to create shared spaces to work. But I haven't done a lot of opening those spaces up across agencies because we've just been working internal with UF. I do host Zoom, I do host a monthly Teams webinar within UF IFAS. And the thing about Teams right now is that it's updating rapidly. So it is responding to user needs, and it's trying to become more user-friendly. So with Teams, kind of my biggest suggestion is become friends with your tech people in your agency who are using Teams, and get them to give you tips, especially if your agency, like UF IFAS, is really embracing the functionality that is involved there. But you also kind of do have to keep up because things change, and usually for the better. And then there are other conference hosting services like Attendify. That's what NASMA used for their big conference. So this is like if we were doing something statewide that was going to bring in a lot of money, you can look into platforms like that. For registration for events, if you're hosting within Zoom, Zoom does give you the option to host registrations, but you can also use Eventbrite, which many of you are probably familiar with, and the free account is typically robust enough for most of the programs CISMAs do. The real good thing about Eventbrite is that it allows you to create an event page, and it gives you a link to share. So one thing that I'm seeing as I put together these monthly, like here's what's going on across the state, is PDF flyers, which are great, but it's super helpful to have a link. And I understand that can be difficult if you don't have access to like your own website. But Eventbrite gives you that ability to just have a page, and so you can see a picture here of the North Central Florida workshop that we did back in October. You have a place to put your agenda, you have a place for registration, and all the other information you need, and you can use that as a web link. It's really helpful when sharing across social media, especially to have a web link versus just a PDF flyer available. And so I'll go on to the next, and then CEUs. So I wanted to make sure folks knew kind of where to go, who to ask these questions to. And so in Florida, we have kind of 4 primary organizations that offer CEUs. The biggest one, of course, being the FDACS pesticide applicator license. And so what I've done, and I'm going to pull this up, I'm putting this all together for you guys in kind of a quick guide to, with hyperlinks and everything here. And so for the CEU component, what you'll have is a link to the program providers information. For FDACS, you've got the requirements for the applicators themselves, the deadlines for submitting, and a contact person. So for FDACS, I've worked, you have to get an account online, but it's pretty easy. And then this, with CEUs, it's really just about not being afraid to contact the people who host the CEUs and ask them questions. So anytime I've done an event with FDACS, I've submitted it, and I've often gotten feedback from Shawana Henderson, who's the CEU coordinator, and she'll either call me or email and say, hey, we need to adjust this and that, but she's really easy to work with and really responsive to questions, and also like will help you fix your program if there's any issues once you've put it in. So I'm gonna, one of the questions I have for you guys, and maybe you can follow up in the chat box or send me emails, is looking at this, this kind of resource. What else do you need at your, what else are there, is there anything missing here that you would like to be able to just have in one document together that you can just click on the links and go to find? And so let me know what I can add to this. Again, going through the CEUs, the Society of American Foresters offers CEUs. These applications must be received 3 weeks before the event. So I would say the best rule of thumb is to add 2 weeks, or even more, depending on when you want to advertise your event, because this is like the deadline. So like if it gets there 3 weeks before, you may just find out, you know, the day before the event. So if you want to have more time, you know, give yourself as much time as possible when you're submitting these. Chris Demers is a contact for the Society of American Foresters. Excuse me, the caveat here being that if you're with UF-IFAS, you have to submit to the national team because there's a conflict of interest. Both of the approvers in Florida are based out of UF. And then the International Society of Arboriculture also does CEUs. And you've got the contact information there, as well as the Wildlife Society. And again, on this document that I'll send you next week, you'll have those links there. So one of the things that was hit on earlier is the benefits of hooking up with your IFAS Extension office and your CISMA. And so I wanted to kind of make that note, sorry, I'm kind of here, is that oftentimes your UF-IFAS extension folks are going to be set up to use these virtual platforms. So if it's not something you have a lot of experience with, you know, definitely reach out to your local extension to see if you can partner with them. And also just get in touch with me too, because I'm happy to, one of the things I can do to help if your local extension isn't available is, you know, I can set up your Eventbrite page, I can schedule your meeting and make you a host. So those are the types of things that I'm here to support you guys with and happy to do. You know, so let us know if you need that kind of assistance. So with that, since we're over, I can definitely open it up. I'm happy to get any feedback. But again, I think one of the key take-home messages today is that we now have the opportunity to host these virtual events statewide. So I think communicating a lot more with what all the other CISMAs are doing, and kind of, you know, what I think is really exciting about hearing all the updates from the CISMA is there really are these niches that you guys have developed, and there isn't too much reinvention of the wheel, right? There's interest, there's things you guys are doing that are applicable across the state, but it really kind of is your own niche, and so it's about expanding that out and allowing others to copy it. So I really hope that this has been useful for you guys and beneficial. Again, we'll do some more information sharing on the virtual events since we kind of got short on time. But I think the updates from Dr. Enlow were definitely really critical and time sensitive. So I'm so glad we got to include that as well.